Today we are doing a frequently asked questions episode. And what are the frequently asked questions about? The 6 Besties theory. It's an FAQ for 6 Besties Theory Day. This episode is a part 2, if you will. And it's not a part 2 to the original TikTok video series, but it's a part 2 to the recent, long form Hero 6 Besties piece that I published a couple days ago. I'm saying I published it a couple days ago, but at the time of recording this podcast, to give you a little bit of inside behind the scenes context, a little scoop, I'm in the middle of editing that right now. This 6 Besties Explained video that I've been wanting to make for a really long time for reasons that I get into in that video, that episode. Video, yeah, it's not an episode because it's not part of the podcast. It's just a standalone video. I get into the reasons, my motivation for making that in there, but at the point, right now, I'm mid-editing it, and I'm at the point in the edit where I am not sure it's going to come together. And I hope that me saying that right now isn't putting signs out into the universe for it to not come together. I'm saying it because I know that this is just a part of the creative process. In anything I make that requires many days, which those are my favorite things to make, the stuff that I don't just bang out in a second, but actually sit with and think about and ideate and refine over days. I really like getting into the weeds of the process. In any of those projects, there comes a time in the middle, maybe even a couple of times where I simply don't think it's going to work. It hasn't clicked yet. It's feeling so muddy. I sort of feel like I'm dragging myself through the mud trying to figure out how to make the piece sing. And sometimes I have to kill ideas because they don't sing, but I trust that this one will sing. I have a few thoughts about what I need to do next to kind of make it feel like a cohesive piece and not just random little threads. Anyway, I'll stop rambling about that, but I'm really excited for that piece to come out. And if you haven't watched it yet and you're not familiar with the 6 Besties theory, you might want to do that before listening to this episode. You can listen to this even if you're loosely familiar with 6 Besties, because I am going to be getting into the most common questions that I've received about the theory over the last year and a half since I've made it. Real quick overview of the 6 Besties theory. It's a friendship theory that I created, and it's basically the idea that we have different friends for different purposes. And in the theory, there are 6 different archetypes for friends. You'll hear them referenced throughout this episode. The theory is here to help us manage our expectations of our friends in our life, and to understand that not every friend is going to check every box. We have different friends for different purposes. And yeah, it's really a tool to help us manage our expectations and reevaluate who's who in our life, and hopefully is a tool to curb disappointment. The 6 Besties theory is a really great tool for somebody who feels confused and disappointed about a lot of their relationships in their life. So that's very high level 6 Besties theory. Again, if you want to learn more about it before getting into these FAQs, go watch the video. Go watch the long form video, which I will link in the description. So the frequently asked question for the 6 Besties theory. Thank you to everybody who sent them to me. A bunch of you sent me your questions on Instagram when I asked for them a few weeks ago. So I've pulled all of those here. And I also went through former videos and all of the comments that were there and tried to find trends. We're going to break the episode down into 3 different sections. First, we're just going to do the frequently asked question about the core concept of 6 Besties theory. And then we're going to make our way into questions about relationship dynamics and how it's sort of what the 6 Bestie looks like in situation. And then we'll end with some of the most common situational advice types of questions. So for that, I did search through my inbox, see when 6 Besties was coming up in your messages. Thank you, Google, for that search function. And with that, let's get into our episode. So section 1, FAQs about the core concept. First one is, can you have more than one North Star bestie? Absolutely yes. May we all be so lucky to have more than one North Star bestie. And I think that it's absolutely possible. I think lots of friendships, lots of close friendships do naturally evolve into North Bestie type friendships. And to break that question down kind of even more, 6 Besties theory, the 6 Besties theory does not mean 6 different friends. And I say that in the video, so that's repetitive for those of you who have listened to both pieces. But it's not about 6. It's not about 6 individual friends. So you can absolutely have more than one North Star bestie. You can have more than one work bestie. The more, the merrier. Some people might not want more than one tons and tons of friends. Like some people are naturally just a little bit more, keep their circle smaller. So if you only have one, it's okay. If you have three, it's okay. The Six Besties theory is not like a formula that you must follow. It's not meant to be that. It's more of a framework just to help guide you. So yes, you can absolutely have more than one. I have more than one North Star bestie for sure. The next question is there any bestie type that you could expect to talk to every day? Ooh. This, I don't talk to most people every day. I think the only person I talk to every day is my husband. And we, live together and work from home together. And, even on days when like he's on a business trip and he's traveling, we do talk every day in the sense that we will like touch base and get a pulse check. But even on those days, like he and I aren't having deep conversations. So I think part of this answer is like so person dependent. I don't expect to be in contact with anybody in my life every day. There are people with whom I'm in more close contact or I talk with more casually and more frequently. So I would say, is there any bestie that you could expect to talk to every day? I feel like that's separate from the Six Besties framework. Like I have North Star besties who I don't talk to anybody every day. I was going to say I have North Star besties who I don't talk to every day, but like this gets into like communication expectations, which I think is like a level 2 in Six Besties or like a level 2 thing to consider in friendship. And everyone's entitled to their own communication expectations. But I think it would be so limiting if you as a person, like let's say you as a person prefer kind of constant communication or you're looking for someone in your life to check in with daily. I think it would be really limiting to expect that of all of your friends. And I know that's not what the question is asking. The question is asking, can I expect that of anyone? This gets into a really interesting like conversation about like friends versus romantic partners. I think I'm going to say no. I'm going to say you couldn't just expect. There's not a single bestie that means you talk every day. No. I think that is going to be personality dependent. And I would encourage you to be flexible with what's the word I'm looking for? With like the cadence and frequency of your communication. And if you're looking for someone to check in with daily, like that's going to be more of a compatibility thing between you and two people. And even if you do find a best friend who likes to be kind of constantly chatting and checking in and you do kind of play that role for each other in life, prepare for that to ebb and flow. Because I don't think no communication can stay completely steady forever. Like friends will go through periods where you'll be chatting all the time. Maybe you're going through something at the same time. So you're just like more regularly talking through it. And then that season will sort of shift. So it's really interesting because I do think you can expect to talk to like touch base with a romantic partner every day. And so I guess the argument would be, well, why shouldn't you do that with friends? Why don't we value friends the same way? And I think there are I value friendship in my life just as much as romance. Like my friends are, a huge part of my happiness and well-being. And like, I can't imagine life without them. And I don't think that they're equal. It's not that one is more, but I do think they're different. So maybe equal actually isn't even the right word. But I think that there are different expectations, or at least I have different expectations for my husband than I do for my friend. And I think having different expectations is healthy. It wouldn't be healthy for me necessarily to like expect the same things of friends that I do of my husband. But different people might have different perspectives on that, especially folks who don't opt into marriage and like that whole kind of traditional monogamy system. I think that people may feel differently about the role that friends play in their life, which is an interesting thing to talk about and to think more about. But to bring it back to your question, no, I don't think there's any bestie that you can expect to talk to every day, but you very well might. Number 3, can a romantic partner, sibling, or family members be a North Star bestie or any type of bestie for that matter? Yeah, absolutely. However, to go back to what I was just saying about the role of friends and lovers, like, and family, your family and your romantic partner can absolutely and like will probably check these boxes, but that doesn't erase the need to have them in friendship. Like the whole point of Six Besties theory is to uplift and put some value in friendship. Because again, I do believe the friendship is like a core part of well-being. It's part of an effort to get deeper into community. None of us are meant to just live in these like little silos with like, hey, I'm just over here with my husband and like the only person I talk to is my sister. And that's not, I don't say that to shame anyone who does function like that, but I think there's so much to gain when we value community more. And when we that's such a broad phrase, like just start investing in community. A tactical way to go about that, I think, is to invest more in your friendships and to start valuing them more in your life. So I think like when I think about Brian, my husband, like he in some way checks all of the 6 bestie boxes, right? Probably the most important one that your long-term partner checks is like North Star. But I would, I want him to check a lot of these boxes. He doesn't necessarily check the work bestie box. And that's sort of an interesting, like, especially I was going to say it's an interesting dynamic that we've had to unpack. And like an area of tension in our relationship has been when I like try to use him too much as a work bestie. And especially as we both started working from home and then I started working for myself and building Hello Hayes, we definitely had to kind of figure out some balance and find additional people for me to get advice from, vent to, brainstorm with, because it was a lot for any one person. And the same rule applies, like the same reason we have different friends for different purposes in friendship. It's also to take some burden off of your spouse or your long-term partner or your sibling. Like it's to spread out the love, really. So yes, a sibling lover can be one of the besties, but it's not like, oh, I have, my sister's my North Star bestie, so therefore I don't need it anywhere else. If you don't feel you need it, you don't feel you need it. But I would argue that there are almost 2 different categories to consider. So the next question is, are there certain qualities that all the besties should have? I think I'm going to kind of flip that question on its head. Like, it's not that there's certain qualities they all should have, but there is a quality they shouldn't have. And they shouldn't make you hate yourself. That's a very aggressive way of saying it. But like the 6 besties framework is not to be used as an excuse for bad behavior. Like if you have a friend who every time you hang out, you feel drained, you feel belittled, you doubt yourself, they put gossip into your head about things other people said to you, we're not just like, oh, they're a good time bestie. They might not be a compatible friend for you. And I think 6 besties theory is a really helpful step 1 for you to use when there's someone you're like kind of unsure about. First, apply the 6 besties theory lens to the difficulty that you're having with them. And then from there, because what might happen and what I've heard from thousands of people is like, oh, 6 besties theory like made me feel so much better in these friendships because I re-leveled my expectations. And then I realized that like, actually part of the problem was me. Like I was wanting this person to be someone that they're not. But now that I'm no longer living in like a delusional land where I want this person to suddenly become completely different than they are, I actually enjoy my time with them now. Like if you want to see if the 6 besties theory will help you do that and like if it will help things click into place, because then you might start to feel differently about someone. However, if you apply this theory and you say, okay, maybe they're my good time bestie, but then you keep hanging with them, and even though you've shifted your expectations, they still continue to suck, then it's another reevaluate the friendship and you decide like, do I want to just pull away completely? And if so, is this something that I need to address or can it just kind of happen naturally? So that's what I'd say. Like none of the besties should make you feel bad about yourself repeatedly and after you've done some self-reflection. Another question is it okay if you have a different type of bestie, like a gaming bestie, for example? Yeah, 100%. Like feel free to add a 7th bestie to the list. Like these names are malleable. I think that seasonal bestie is like, could also be like the miscellaneous bestie. I think I had a different word for it originally. I don't remember what it was, but seasonal bestie, I think can be swapped in and out for like anything specific in your life, but feel free to add a 7th, feel free to add more. It's sort of 6 besties theory is a starting point for then you to think about the different needs you have in your life. And then to be, that it's really a starting point for that. So it can grow to as many as work for you, right? And then your task is to go out and try to meet people who scratch all of these itches, who bring out something in you that you're looking for. So yeah, add as many as you'd like. So those are some of the main questions I get about like the core basic concept. Now we're going to move into questions I receive about like the relationship dynamics. So how the different bestie roles interact and shift. Question 1, how do you know what kind of bestie you are to other people? Don't think about that. I would not spend your time thinking about that. And I know it's gonna happen, and we'll get into that in some other questions, but I would advise you not to think about where you fit into other people's lives. Six Besties theory is not a tool to control others or to analyze how we fit into their life. It is not a tool to please people and try to fit in a specific way. It's meant for you to look at your life and how people relate to you. It's almost sort of like, how when we interview for jobs, we can be so focused on wanting to get the job or like please the person in power that we stop thinking about whether the job is actually a good fit for us. And sure, it's a privilege to be in a position where you can choose the job you want and be thinking about that. But like from a social level, I find that so interesting how so many times in my life, like I've become so focused on wanting the other person to think I'm impressive or for them to want me that I like am not thinking about how they make me feel at all. Or if they do make me feel a certain negative way, I assume that's my fault just based on the dynamic and how I'm there to try to please them. So Six Besties theory, like if you start to notice, well, do they see me as this or this or this? Remind yourself, that's not what the Six Besties theory is for. It's not what it's for. It's for me to think about others. Okay. So don't think about that. Don't think about that. Now, the next question though, can your North Star bestie have another North Star bestie, or does it have to be reciprocated? So I don't know my 100% answer to this one. I do kind of think that North Star bestie friendship is sort of like being in love. Like, can you be in love with someone who isn't in love with you back? I'm not sure, because I think about being in love as a act between two people. Something sparks when the love is reciprocated and when it's reciprocated in a compatible, energizing, magical way. Like, I think North Star bestie friendship is a magical friendship. And if someone doesn't see you that way, I don't know then if that can, like, I don't know then what that does to the friendship. But at the same time, I think that I might have people in my life who see me in like a North Star capacity, whereas I love them, but they might not do exactly for me what I do for them. And so I'd have to then assume also there are people in my life who do for me something that I don't necessarily do in the exact same way for them. So that's why I feel kind of stuck on this. I feel stuck on the answer, and I feel hesitant to give a specific answer. Though I guess to pull it back, your North Star bestie can definitely have more North Star besties. So they might have multiple. So you might be one and they might have another one. And guess what? What both of you do might be different. Like the North Star bestie value that you each provide to your friend's life, like might be different. You might spark something different for them. I know that's going to upset some people in the sense that you want a clear answer, but I don't think there is a clear answer. I do think it's nuanced. I think sometimes yes, it has to be reciprocated, and sometimes no. And I think the sometimes no, I think that works when you're not obsessing about what you are. Which is why that first question, when I said, how do you know what kind of bestie you are to other people? I'm like, don't even think about it. Because if you truly aren't thinking about it, and you have a friend who you feel is a North Star bestie to you, like you won't actually care about whether they see you that way. Because if you feel it from them, if you feel North Star bestie friendship from them, it doesn't matter. Like they're already treating you in the way you want to be treated, and they're already making you feel the way you want to feel. So who gives a fuck if they actually see you that way? I think where I'd start to maybe why I think it does have to be reciprocal is because I see a lot of people out here saying, my North Star bestie does X, Y, and Z, lists off all these like really shitty behaviors. And then I'm like, babe, I don't think they see you as a North Star bestie. Like a North Star bestie wouldn't treat you that way repeatedly. And that's why I'm like, That's why maybe actually I do lean more towards, yes, it's reciprocal. And if it's not reciprocal, you're going to see it. You're going to see it show up in negative other ways. So that's where we're landing on. That's where we're landing on that one. The next question is, how do you navigate when you're not the same type of bestie to each other? Like they're your OG bestie, but they see you as a North Star. I think the first question is like, does it matter? Right? Because again, you might be getting preoccupied with labels and you might be getting obsessive about wanting to know that like, you're my best friend. No, I'm your best friend. Like we're each other's best friends and no other best friends. Like I think you want to check to see if you're doing that kind of thing. So ask yourself, like, does this actually matter? Why am I even asking this question about what we are to each other? Is it showing up is it manifesting in like behaviors, actions, issues that are threatening our friendship? How do you navigate it? Like, I don't know if there's so much to do. Sometimes we like, when we start to notice any sort of mismatch, our first instinct is like, I have to do something about this. I have to do something so it doesn't get worse. And sometimes we want to do that before it's necessary, and it might never be necessary. Like we're anticipating a problem before there is one. So I'd say, 1, who cares? 2, like who cares if you're not the same bestie to each other? And if it is resulting in an issue, then we'll get to that. Next question is there a way to tell from the start when someone is a North Star bestie or a seasonal bestie? I don't think that any North Star bestie is going to kick off as a North Star bestie. They're probably going to enter your life through, especially in adulthood, through like the seasonal bestie or work bestie sphere. Because that's really how we make friends, right? Through work or through hobbies, shared interests. Sometimes as adults, you meet people through getting set up. That's actually how I've met a lot of my friends out here in LA. But your North Star bestie is probably going to start off as something else. And I think that in any of these friendships, there's going to be a spark. I think North Star besties in particular have a very special type of spark, the friendship version of love at first sight, if you will, a natural ease, a compatibility. I say that talking with your North Star bestie reminds you like, oh shit, it's actually so much harder to connect with other people. Like I didn't even realize how high my shoulders were in some of these other conversations with people. Like a North Star bestie will remind you of what it feels like to be easy and natural with somebody. But I think it's just a spark. I don't think that there's like things to look for necessarily. But you should know that every North Star bestie begins as something else. And every person you meet, I think there's potential for that relationship to grow if you water it. Which leads me to the next question is, can one friendship transition between multiple categories over time? Like, could they start as an OG and then move into a seasonal and then a North Star? Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. I think all friendships inevitably will be moving throughout these. An OG bestie is, I think of it as like a retired North Star bestie. And they become retired sometimes because of physical distance or for all sorts of reasons that aren't personal, and they don't have to be sad. But you can come back into each other's lives. And that's part of why I think the Six Besties theory is so beautiful, because it stops us from kicking people out of our lives when actually they're just like taking a break. Our lives are all going to be these like beautiful, wild kaleidoscopes of experiences, and we're going to have many stops along the way. And the train just keeps moving. And I think Six Besties theory allows us to stay on the train, and like we're all getting off at different stops, but the train's going to come back. And there's always opportunities for your old friends to join you again. And maybe you'll end up in the same location. Without Six Besties theory, sometimes we close the door forever. And that's sad. It's not the way I want to live. I want to be open and expansive and, welcome people back into my life if the circumstances allow for it. And you know what? If we never are as close again as we were when we were 20, like I'm okay with that. And I still hold such love for you. But you never say never. You never say never. And I think, yeah, so friendships are definitely going to transition throughout all of these. And I think you can sort of think about your friends. I'm moving my hand right now, if you're not watching, in a circle, sort of like like a magic spell. What's the movie? What's my favorite Marvel? Doctor Strange, but Tilda Swinton's character. Oh, I feel like Doctor Strange does this too. But you can sort of picture your friends moving in this like circular motion. And I don't know, they never need to leave forever. It's just movement. There's lots of movement in friendship. And I think the more that we can become comfortable with that, which is a practice, it is a practice to become comfortable with it. Then when things change, it doesn't feel shocking because it's always changing. So now we're going to get into some more specific, like situational six besties theory situations. Not to use the word situation twice. These are some situations that I see frequently come up in your advice letters. So one of them is, my North Star bestie has been distancing from me lately, and I'm worried about losing them. What do you think I should do? I think when you feel that someone is distancing from you, the first thing to do is be like, how can I take that a little bit less personally? Are they distancing from me, or are they busy right now? Like, it's sometimes not about you. And I don't mean that in a, you're a narcissist, you're self-interested, but oftentimes our first instinct is to take things very personally, but like people aren't always thinking about us. The reason your friend, you might feel your North Star bestie is distant, but maybe she's under the weather. Maybe she is having a busy week at work. Sometimes we interpret people's distance as like totally a projection of our own insecurities. So first I would consider that, like, distance does not equal someone distancing from you. Distance is not a dirty word. It is not necessarily a bad thing. Space isn't a bad thing. However, that's not to say, like, sometimes people are pulling away and sometimes people are distancing from you intentionally. Or even if it's not intentional, sometimes what you're noticing is a shift to like North Star to OG. Maybe you moved away and I don't know, you're noticing that there's a longer gap between your catch-ups. I think, well, one thing again not to do is to try to tighten the grip, which is an instinct. When you feel something changing, we want to grip on for dear life until our knuckles go white because we don't want to lose this friendship. But I find that when we try to resist a natural shift happening, natural growth in both of our lives, that's when friendships start to really go sour, when someone tries to resist what's happening naturally. That doesn't mean that you have to not acknowledge it. It doesn't mean ignore it. It doesn't mean put up with bad behavior. But I think the first thing to do is be like, hey, I'm recognizing, and you say this to yourself, and maybe with somebody else who you love and who isn't involved in this relationship, like, I'm noticing that my friendship with them is going through a little bit of a quieter period. But I trust that that's okay. I trust that that's okay, that I'm going to be okay, that they're going to be okay, and that we still love each other, and we're still going to love each other, even if this week, next week, coming weeks look different. And I'm going to continue to love them. I'm going to let them have this space. I'm going to take some space for myself. And I would think for you about how you can how can you put some of that loving energy towards other people in your life and other things that are more immediately available. Sometimes when we do that, when we just let go a little bit, we realize like this wasn't a big deal, and actually they're not distancing themselves. They just had a busy month and we're going to catch up later. I think I really want to stress though, like the not doubling down on trying to hold on, because that doesn't work. The next question, which is similar, is how do I navigate or grieve the change when my North Star bestie becomes something else? I feel like we talked a little bit about that, but time. Unfortunately, time is a big one. Like if the shift does feel like a loss that you are grieving, I think time does help. And I hate that answer is true, but just like any loss or any shift, time does make it better. But during that time, I think spending time, not to double use the word time, but surrounding yourself with people who can help fill that void, who you love being with, who can take your mind off of the loss, I think that really helps. And part of why I love Six Besties theory and different friends for different purposes is that you never then are, you're making sure your cup is full with lots of different people and lots of different experiences. And by building your life in such a way, building your relationships in such a way, the goal is then that when their role shifts a little bit, it doesn't suddenly feel like you're going cold turkey on friendship. That's not to say it's not going to hurt and it's not going to be hard, but I want you to remember all the other wealth you have in your life in terms of community and friendship. I think you can also tell them. Now, there's a way to tell somebody that you miss them and you miss the way things were that isn't demanding they change. I wouldn't recommend, for your own sake, like we can't ever beg someone to be there for us, or we can't beg people to be our friend. I just don't think it works. I don't think that that's how people become friends. Like I don't think it works. So I don't want to put you in the position where you're begging for somebody's friendship. I think a question that you should ask yourself if you're navigating a friendship transition is, okay, here's the transition I'm noticing. I can't change their behavior, but I can control mine. So if this is the situation, what am I willing to put into this friendship right now? So if my North Star bestie isn't that available and it's looking more like we'll have a phone catch up every 2 months, am I okay with that? What do I need to do on my end so that I can work with that? And if I can't, then you pull back and you are in control of you. We're not in control of someone else. And I think we get into trouble when we start. It's like, oh, my North Star bestie's drifting. How do I make her stay? How do I tell her that my friendship can't continue with this? I think it's not something that you tell, and it's not that it's not something you tell. It's not something that you can force somebody to do. You have to decide, is that true? Can I actually not continue a friendship with this person unless we talk all the time? Or am I just trying to control them? Am I just threatening them because I'd prefer us to talk all the time? I'd prefer if everything stayed the same. It might be on you to expand your idea of what this relationship can look like. But in addition to that, I think it's time and spending, letting time go on. I think that helps with the grief, and spending time with people you love and who make you feel good. What should we do if an OG bestie gets angry with us for not remaining a North Star bestie? Nothing. There's nothing for you to do. Like sometimes, you can continue to be kind and loving and show up for them when you can. Remember, being an OG bestie does not mean that you are a bad friend. We don't treat our OG besties like shit. When they need us, we are there for them. But there's a shift that's happened. And so what do you do? You continue to show up in the kind, loving ways that you are able to right now. Beyond that, there's not much to do. If they're expecting something of you that you're not able to give, that's on them to process and decide what they want to do about it. There's nothing for you to do, which is what I think I was trying to talk about before. Like, we are only in control of ourselves, and you're responsible for being kind and honest and flexible, but you don't have a responsibility for how they feel. If you can't change, right? And if you can't give them what they're looking for, then then that's it. That's it. I'm sorry they're upset. I'm sorry you're upset. I hear you. I know it's hard. I love you. This is what it is right now. That's on them to process. Another common question that I get is, what if you have a friend who always shares deep things with you, but then when you go to share, it's like they have too much going on to listen, or they don't quite reciprocate in the same way? Do you just consider them a good time bestie, or is it something else? I think that's such a good question, and it's so dependent on the situation. Again, good time besties or any of the besties are not an excuse for bad behavior. You have to decide whether this friendship brings you enough other good juice, like for it to be okay that they don't show up for you in that emotional way. And if you don't think they do, like if they don't provide enough other good stuff to your life, then maybe that's a friendship that you back away from. Another common question is that people feel sometimes that they are everyone's North Star besties, but they don't have any North Star besties themselves. How do I bridge that so I feel supported too? People ask. That's so interesting, especially if you notice that like all of your friends feel like good time besties, or just people that aren't as deep maybe, but you yourself are deep. I think that sounds like an interesting pattern. Like I look around and it appears that all of my friends are one note. I guess there's one question where you can say, am I not giving them a chance? Like, do some of them have more depth, but I've put them into such a box and the sides are taped so tightly that I haven't given them room to expand. So you could ask yourself that. But two, it might be a sign that you need to look for friends in different places. Just like in dating, sometimes people date the same types of people over and over and over again. Like there might be a role that you play in the types of friends you've been seeking out. So I would look to things like, where have I been making these friends? Are they all kind of from the same, like, am I only friends with people from in my sorority from college now that I've moved to the next city? Or am I only friends with people who live on my one street in my neighborhood and we're all the same socioeconomic class and we all do the same thing? Maybe it's a sign for you that you need to branch out and start meeting different types of people. Look, maybe like this would be an opportunity to start investing in some seasonal besties. Like, what are some of your hobbies and interests? What are things you're passionate about? Are there different like community groups? Can I volunteer? Can I start going to tennis lessons? Like, can I start engaging in more of these things that are important to me and then making friends through there? And then seeing if that spark happens in any of those new friendships. Another question is, my work bestie's been getting upset when I make plans without them. How do I reestablish boundaries without losing them? And I think we could replace work bestie in this situation with like any type of friend, you know? First of all, I wouldn't use the word boundaries with them. Boundaries is one of those words that I think is meant to use when you're talking to yourself or with someone about yourself, like with your therapist about yourself or with me or with an unrelated party. I don't think boundaries really is a word that we should be using with other people because of how frequently it's misused. Like it's way too... I actually want to do an episode all about words and things that I think we should stop saying. Boundaries is just one of those words. Like describe it using any other word. You know how like it's so annoying when someone asks you to define a word and then people will define the word using the word? Same type of thing. You can talk about your boundaries without using the word boundary. I think there's a painful reality sometimes that when we are living in our... when we are honoring our own boundaries, I can use boundary in this setting because we're talking about ourselves. When we honor our own boundaries, and maybe a boundary of yours is that you have different friends for different purposes, and sometimes you have one-on-one relationships, which isn't even a boundary, I don't think. I think that's just like a, state of physics that you can have one-on-one friendships. Sometimes when we do that and we have friends who don't practice those same values, sometimes it will hurt their feelings. Sometimes it will result in losing them. But you can't control your work bestie. If your work bestie wants to end your friendship because you have other friends, that's on them. And that friendship was probably never one that was going to be very strong and lasting to begin with. Now, if your work bestie, if they truly are your work bestie and you love and care for them, maybe ask yourself questions like, are they lacking in community elsewhere? While I don't need to invite them to everything, could I include them more? If what they're looking for is making new friends, can I help facilitate that for them? Because that is something that we do for people we love and care about. So I would encourage you to think flexibly too. Like our boundaries, some of them are firm, and then some of them we need to be flexible with. And maybe there's a world where you do include your work bestie in some things because it's important to them. And also like, are you not including them in things where they should be included? I feel the need to throw that out too. Like, are they getting upset because they feel excluded? They rightfully feel excluded? Or, are they wanting to be invited to everything in your life outside of work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? You might not need to do anything. You might need to just continue to show up for them in the way that you can and are able, and then they'll make their own choice about what they want to do about your friendship. And then somebody asked me, how have I, Hayes, filled the work bestie role when you worked from home or for yourself? And this wasn't a frequently asked question, okay? But I wanted to answer it because I bet a lot of you work from home or work for yourself or might struggle with this. And, it's actually been really hard. It's definitely been hard to not have a work bestie in my line of work. And it has made it challenging in my relationship sometimes because there have been times when I've put too much of that on Brian or have wanted or expected him to kind of be the work bestie. And he's not my work bestie. He is there to talk about lots of things. And I promise you, we talk about my work and my stuff and all of that quite often. But there's a balance. And this was more of an issue when I first started. And I've since kind of, as I've tried to invest more in work besties, that's gotten better, but it is something that's top of mind for me. I think it's been hard. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's definitely been hard. I am lucky to have some former work friends, like one of my best friends, Stephanie, who's been on the podcast, and I feel like I talk about her a lot. She and I worked together, and I would not have called us, like we were not best friends at work. We weren't on the same team. Anyway, we worked together then. I'm really lucky that she has her own digital brand. She has her company, The New Happy, and she's an author and a writer and a creator, and we share a lot of interests. So like she's become my work bestie in lots of ways. Like just yesterday, I was texting her something about, the way I'm thinking about my Instagram, and can you give me some feedback on this? And we had a great, I'm having a lot of fun on my Instagram right now. If you follow me there, maybe you've noticed. And it feels really fun to be having fun on that platform. But I was texting her and I'm like, how much do you think I should be thinking about like growth and strategy stuff. And we had a little texting back and forth convo. And then I ultimately asked her, I was like, if you were in charge of me, if you were in charge of me for the next 6 months, like what would you tell me to do? And she's like, honestly, I would tell you not to focus on numbers at all, and instead just focus on showing up in a way that feels fun and creative and authentic for you every day. So that's like, we have that type of relationship. And that to me, in this world that I'm building, like that to me is a work bestie. I have other friends too, who I lean on and who I call to ask for help. And I could really be a lot better at this. Like I am a bit of a hermit. Is that true? I'm definitely an introvert. Like I could go 2 weeks without talking to anybody and I wouldn't notice. Like I wouldn't like feel anything. I wouldn't feel anything bad. I could be better about like reaching out and meeting people in my community and connecting with other creators, but it makes me nervous. It's a type of friendship that I think makes me nervous. And that's a good thing for me to think about and unpack. And maybe it makes you nervous too if you work from home or you work for yourself, like meeting other people in your industry and who are doing the same thing as you might be hard. I've met a lot of people, like when I have made internet friends or new work from home friends, it's been like by following people and messaging them and telling them I'm a fan and getting rejected. Like there are people who I have followed who have followed me back. And I thought at first, like I used to maybe naively thought that was like going to be an invitation to be friends. And it hasn't always. Like I've reached out and said, oh my God, I love your stuff. Like I think we would get along. I would love to take you to coffee, would love to meet. And sometimes people have ghosted me or they haven't responded. And that's okay. So I think there is some rejection and there's some, when you don't have the benefit of like being under the same workplace, there's just, you have to put yourself out there a little bit more, kind of like dating. And I don't know, I'm not the best at it, but it's something I want to be better at. And it's something that I definitely feel the lack when I don't have it. Like it feels so lonely when I don't have someone to talk about work stuff with, when I don't have someone to like shit talk with, when I don't have someone to complain to who gets it. The work bestie is so important, a true authentic work bestie, because like we all deserve to have someone to complain about our responsibilities to without seeming out of touch. And I think there's a very special thing that happens when you're both working on a project together or you're both in the exact same boat where you can complain about like the minutia and the stupid stuff without having to caveat it with, how blessed and how lucky and all that stuff, which sometimes you do have to do when you're talking to other people about your work. I don't know. There's not really a clear answer there, but I wanted to answer it so that you know that if you're dealing with that, I'm dealing with it too, and you're not alone. So those are some of the frequently asked questions I get about the theory. There's definitely more that I didn't address. I tried to address as many as I could. If you have more questions that have come up while you're listening, please drop them in the comments. I will try to answer them, but you guys can help answer them to each other too. Like, I'm building the 6 Besties theory in real time, and so are you guys. Like the theory, yes, I made it up and I created it and maybe put it into the world, and it takes on a new life with you. You are becoming experts in the theory yourself, and I welcome you to weigh in with each other and to give advice to each other about the theory based on how it's been working in your life. Like nothing would make me happier. Nothing does make me happier, actually, than to see you like connecting with each other and expanding on some of the principles that I talk about here. I just think that's the coolest. Thank you for hanging out with me today. It was a great episode, in my opinion. I loved sitting here and talking with you, and I hope you found it valuable as well. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast, on YouTube, or follow on your streaming platform. You can find me on Instagram at afhayes. And I love you and I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week. Bye.